Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2 of the Netflix series Sense8. Literally, I am recording this minutes after I finish the season. Obviously, I'm going to be getting into heavy spoilers. But first, I'll give you a warning when I'm going to enter spoiler territory. Really quickly, I'll kind of give, just a really general idea over just how I felt about this season. Obviously, like I said, I won't go into too many spoilers. I will announce when I'm going into spoilers. So, this is just for anyone that might be watching who comes to this and I'm not really sure if I really am going to, I don't know if I really want to watch it. I'd rather get someone else's opinion at a time for every reason, whatever reason you might come to mind. And I'd like to get your opinion about it. First of all, I will say it is, bluntly speaking, fucking fantastic. Loved every second of it. Obviously, season 1, I really liked season 1, but to me, season 2's even better. I've seen some people prior to this because I was looking up a thumbnail picture for the watch list video I did for Sense8, and that was something I randomly read one time, and they're I 100% agree. I didn't read too deeply into it, but it's just that one sense of even better first season. 100% is, because it basically takes all we know about the first season. Obviously, the first season's a lot of setup, introducing you to this, and now it's they took that, and obviously they're expanding upon the lore, learning more about what a Sense8 is, and obviously following the adventures of the cluster that we're following. Will and everyone else following their side stories, but also progressing this main plot against BPO. Like I said, no spoilers, but it's just fantastic. If you are on the fence, stop that now. If you like season 1, you're going to love season 2. But that's just my opinion. This is just how I feel about it. I'm just I was super hyped. I was super excited about this. So that's all I'm really going to say about it. At this point, I will go ahead and tell you now, we will officially be entering in spoiler territory. I will not be talking about everything in any particular order. So it's I've watched up to episode 5. So obviously, it's no, I'm not going to do that. When it comes to these, I talk about things in weird order. So I'm going to be bouncing all across it. So if you have not seen the entirety of season 2 of Sense8, do not listen to this. If you want to, you can go watch it and then come back to this and listen to it if you want to. But the main thing I want to get across is watch season 2. This show is so good. So, you have been thoroughly warned. So now let's get into it. First of all, just everyone's individual stories this season. Obviously, we learned from the Christmas special that, Wolfgang's got to deal with this whole kingdom situation. Obviously, now that he's killed his uncle, there's a graph for power with all these different people. We met 2 of them. One of them's name is Sebastian, the other Volker, who we met in the Christmas special, which we haven't seen. I think he popped up maybe one other time throughout the rest of the season. The other person we mainly dealt with was Sebastian, and obviously him and Wolfgang and Felix, and also got introduced to Leela, another Sense8. That was a good thing about this season too. We expanded beyond, obviously we met a few Sense8s here and there in season 1, but it was the one lady that talked to Riley when Riley went back home. Also Jonas. That's about it. But Leela, honestly, the biggest middle fingers to Leela. It's obviously acting all seductive and stuff. At first, when that happened, I was that's crazy. She's literally making out with Wolfgang in his mind, and at one point everyone was just looking at him. It's almost like he's trying to hump the air. But screw her, dude. Basically, she sets him up so that Sebastian thinks that Wolfgang's working with someone else and trying to come after him and stuff. When in actuality, he originally thought it was Leela that was behind it. But obviously, she quickly turned it, flipped the script on him. Basically, she wants to work with her, she wants to work with Wolfgang more so than anything, use him, because she sees how good Wolfgang is, and it's if she can, probably Wolfgang could easily rule everything in Berlin, but it's she wants to kind of manipulate him so that she says she wants to build a city where it's oh yeah, Sense8s can kind of rule it and stuff like that. She's basically oh, you could get everyone in town to fall to their knees and then because these aren't your people, I'm your people, being the Sense8 and everything. Which he was the fact of the matter is, these are my people, because in Berlin we bow down to no one. I'm yeah, and it led to the sickest thing that's never come up before, a full-on cluster battle between it was just so sick, dude. And especially like you see her cluster forming behind her, and at the same time you see Wolfgang walking past each one of his cluster, and they're like disappearing behind. I love that they used that special effect. I like the fact of the matter is you can see somebody walking, and then all the rest of the cluster falls behind in the line, and it's just like, especially because it started off as a situation that Wolfgang was going to try and handle by himself and everything, which is like, that was stupid. That like just like the theme of how that look of him just walking and passing everyone in his clusters, and everyone was like, whoa, Wolfgang's in trouble. Like, what's up with him? It's like, you know, I mean, if he really needed our help, he'd ask for it, right? It's like, really? Wolfgang ask for help? Yeah, it's like, yeah, I can't. And Will's like, yeah, I can't even imagine it. So it's just like, and then she sells him out at the end of the season. It's like, what? I was not expecting that, dude. It's just like, because she did make a promise that she was going to get him back for it, but it's like, dude, it's like she's so manipulative. It's like one of the other Sense8s we meet, and she's a douchebag, dude. It's a situation where it's like a dog-eat-dog world. Like, obviously, everyone's trying to survive on their own, because obviously the big threat is like BPO. Everyone's trying to dodge BPO. There's that dude known as Old Man Hoy. He had been dodging them for like 30 years. Because basically this entire season's about going on the offensive, but the fact of the matter is no one wants to, especially when Will and others reach out for other Sense8s. It's like, no one wants to talk to them. It's like, dude, how do we know that you're not actually working for BPO trying to lead us out in a trap? And even if you aren't, you're an idiot for putting yourself out there in the open. You're exposing yourself to BPO. So there's just so much to talk about, dude. Okay, I'm trying to run through everyone's stories. Let's talk about Sun's story. Goodness, her brother attempting to kill her, almost succeeding, get like fake officers. They're actually from a different prison or whatever. Came there, literally tried to hang her. If it wasn't for one of the ladies in her cell, she would have been dead. That lady had like major props to that lady because she saved Sun's life. But it's like those douchebags. And then Sun and her broke out, which lasted for a little while. But eventually the lady was like, yeah, I'm not running anymore. I'm gonna slow you down. Because for her, it's like, you know, it's like, go get your revenge. Because for her, she's like, I'm already serving a life sentence. Like, what more can they do to me? They can put me back in jail. So what? Who cares? But also, like, her meeting up with Wu Jin, like, I thought that was going to be a one-off thing. And then they had that moment. I was like, I didn't even recognize him at first until they started, like, until her and him fought on the roof that time. I was like, huh. I was like, holy crap, that's him. So that wasn't just like some random plot point they brought up in like the first, you know, that Christmas special, which obviously is connected to season 2, but I would just refer it to that just because that's what we saw it as first before we saw it as connected to season 2. But like the fact is that she would run into him like that. I love it. And side note, is it me? I feel like out of anyone, Lito and Sun, I feel like they were in their underwear the most throughout the season. Like, was that my imagination? It's like every chance they got, it's like they had Sun in her underwear. I mean, in the particular situations, it makes sense. She's in prison. It's like, it's hot in there, like, you know, cooling off. Also, it's like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, she's just waking up or something like that. But it's just interesting to me that that was the case. And I feel like I said, Lito's probably like right behind her. But, obviously, she's trying to do everything. She's trying to get a revenge on her brother. It's like, he tried to kill me. It's like, yeah, when it comes down to it, either I'm going to kill him or he's going to kill me. Either way, that's how this is going to end, because it's not going to stop either way. Because, you know, for, you know, Junki, her brother, it's like, she's the only person that knows the truth about everything he's done. Which obviously there's a whole, like, everything transpires at the end of the episode. He ends up shooting Wu Jin, which ends up being okay. But, which I did like the fight they had at her parents' graves. Which, side note, is that how Korea really does their graves? I was like, I mean, it's like, just aesthetically, it's, I mean, I know it's a little morbid to say, but it's very beautiful. Like, I don't know, like, I think I've never really thought about how, like, other countries handle, like, burials and stuff like that. And so, like, to me, I felt like that was only, like, I don't know if that's a thing that really pops up in, like, I know cemetery, like, type of burials, like, you know, in the ground. Like, obviously you have more, like, I don't know what's those ones that are similar to that in Korea where, I mean, at least we saw in this, you know, when Sun was there, like, they're kind of like drawers, like, that are kind of in, like, marble walls or something. I don't know how to properly describe it, but I feel like that might be a thing in the U.S. I'm not, like I said, cemetery, bury you in the ground. I'm more familiar with that, but nevertheless, that was very beautiful. I thought that was kind of, obviously, her mom and dad buried side by side. But I like the fight they had, and obviously, like, Wu Jin wanted it because it's like obviously he believed her about, you know, things about her brother being a little fishy, and the fact of the matter is, he's actually the only person. I mean, granted, everyone in the cell was like knew about her situation as well. I mean, obviously there was other people that were willing to help her out, but they kind of got pushed out of the way by her brother, whether that was because they were killed or just threatened, whatever the case may be. Her sensei is the only other person other than Woojin who knows the truth. But that moment of just them fighting and everything, and it ends with them kissing. I was like, oh. I mean, it doesn't end with them kissing. It then ends with her knocking him out. I was like, oh. But still, that was a nice moment too. So it's like, I appreciate the fact is I thought that was just kind of like a story she was telling to Kala, but it's like, it wasn't just an isolated thing. It ended up being something more, obviously. As we see, and I was scared. I was like, he got shot by Juki. It's like, you literally shot it's like, do you not, once again, have to use the word douchebag? I want to use a lot more, but it's like, hey, I'm trying to pull back the cussing and everything, so I do apologize for that. It's like, I want to say so much more, but it's like, you're such a douche for that. It's like, he's going so far to cover up everything he's done. It's like, you piece of crap, this all-star, your sister literally sacrificed everything for you, and you're going to do this, you're going to kill your father, and you're going to try and kill her. I mean, like those guys, obviously obviously this is fresh in my mind because I rewatched the Christmas special, which obviously, represents the first 2 episodes of the season. But it's like, you're like, oh, he doesn't forgive and everything. It's like, well, I don't forgive the fact that you killed our father. It's like, why? I mean, and the sad thing is, and I feel so bad for Sun because she's tied to her obligations that she made to her mom. Her mom asked her, it's like, promise me that you will take care of your brother. And it's like, dude, because it even came up in conversation. It's like, Sun felt like she let Junki down because she feels like she failed him because it's like I was his responsibility. I was supposed to take care of him, obviously raise him in my mother's place, but I failed him, didn't give him my attention and love. And Nomi's like, the fact of the matter is, I have my problems with my parents. You don't see me being a complete and total psychopath. True example, Nomi is a very good person, and yet you don't see her doing what your brother's done. So like, that's the whole thing, and it's like you feel bad because it's like she's tied to that obligation, but it's like he doesn't deserve that obligation because it's like she even says it like when it all comes down to it, it's like, you're not even my brother anymore. I even love the line of like, really, when she was chasing after him on her bike, I was like, my sister's the fucking Terminator. Which is like, yeah, you piece of crap. Which, side note, I completely forgot this was a whole thing until like there was a conversation when an anonymous person met up with Nomi during that season, and it was like, how many languages you speak? Because she said 7 technically. I was like, right. I keep like in my brain because we all hear everything in English. I forgot. It's like, no, they're all here. They're all speaking their respective languages, but for show purposes, they're like it's coming out in English, but everyone's speaking their respective languages, like Capheus, Swahili, Lito, Spanish, Sun, Korean, so on and so forth. So I was like, right. And it's because of the whole Sense8 thing that everyone can just understand each other. But obviously for the show purposes, made everything in English too. So I was like, I completely forgot about that. Technically, they're really speaking different languages. But when it comes to Sun, dude, there's a part of me in the show that's like, I wish you had taken out your brother, because like now that he's still alive and you came after him like you did, he's going to be even more protected, especially because there's that guy named Tay Park, who is like a politician or something. It's like, dude, he's either with BPO or something. Like, he's probably part of the reason behind why Junki's done what he's done. Like, I'm sure, like, I feel like it seems too big for just some one douchebag like him to do it. I feel like there's got to be bigger players in all this, especially for the fact is that when it was all said and done while she was getting arrested, he came and helped Junki. So I'm assuming there is a lot more to that. I mean, I'm sure that's going to be something that goes forward in the series, but I mean, we'll kind of talk about that later. I'll probably make a video about it. I don't know, just for now, I'm trying to get everything out. But God, that was just like I'm really quickly just like, as I brought up earlier, it's just like, it's building upon what's already been set up by season 1. Like, obviously, we built these, like, relationships already in season 1, and you're expanding upon them, and they're growing even more, like, everyone coming to each other, like, helping each other in their time of need and stuff like that. Probably my favorite just being, I think show stealer in this show, to me personally, has to be Lito. There's that whole situation at, a museum or whatever, where it's like Lito had to take control, and Riley's screaming out, like, there's a bad guy this way, and it's Lito acting in her place. No, Mr. Officer, please be careful. Please be careful. It's like, I love you, Lito. And at the same time, also, like, what was that other thing? When he was crying to Sun, like, Sun's in a love hotel and everything, and then he's crying, and he literally flops on the bed. She's like, every time she's like, go away, stop following me, Lito, I need privacy. And he just won't listen. He just flops on her bed crying and everything. So it was just, like to me, like obviously Lito deals with a lot of dramatic stuff too. Obviously, this season being big on like him dealing with like being gay. Obviously, the first season was him struggling with it, not willing to admit it. Obviously, in this season, because his big. I mean, and that shows you just how much Lito's grown amongst this time we've come to know him. The fact of the matter, obviously, we know through the Christmas special he came out to his mom, which obviously his mom being super cool and also being like, Lito, I always had an idea. You dance too good to be a straight guy, and it's just. It's sad to see how much of Lito's life got turned upside down. Like the point I was really quickly was making is like he had this serious side, but to me it's like I feel like Lito was kind of like a lot of the comedic relief in some cases. They all like have their moments, but I really resonated with Lito in this season of just like to me it's like he's like one of the funniest parts of the show, and I was like, dude, it's like I love every time Lito pops up, especially when was it that dude was talking mad crap. Like there's like a movie that Lito really like. It's like, oh yeah, it's like I think it was a movie that Lito might have actually been in, and the other guy was, I think the guy Vincent was like, yeah, those movies are cheesy, and then Lito was like, because Lito had made a comment about how like sexy he is and everything, because Kala's like, yeah, I don't trust him, but then like the moment he said it's like cheesy. Oh yeah, I don't trust him either. Yeah, you were right from the beginning. Colin's like, oh, I love you, Lito. But getting back to it, it's like the fact of the matter is, it's a story of just like you like, and it's sad. Like, and to me, that holds true weight to not just within the show, but obviously the actors too. He's like, one thing you step out of line in one shape or form, you go from hero to zero. Obviously, a line he kept repeating. It's just like he was on top of the world, and in a moment, like he openly admitted to being gay. Not even just about the pictures and stuff. Obviously, that caused some problems, but the fact of the matter is, openly admitting to being gay. Everyone turned their backs on him. His agencies and stuff like that weren't giving him lead roles and stuff anymore. Like they were kind of typecasting. It was like, oh, get these roles here and there. People who like his agency being like, oh, we're gonna have your back. You're our guy. And it's like in the moment things kind of turn around. It's like you didn't have his back. Which at the end of the day, it's kind of good that they did that because it shows their true colors. Because the fact of the matter is, I mean, it showed everyone's true colors. Like his mom said too. It's like the fact of the matter is like because it shouldn't matter about his sexual orientation. Why should that matter to them? But to everyone, they turn against him. But obviously, the gay community, in general, just like praised him. And it's like, at one point, asking him to go to that Pride Parade. But obviously, he had his reservations. But then there, in front of them all, he was able to finally like open up and admit, it's like, I am a gay man. And it's like, it was a beautiful thing, dude. Luckily at the end of it all, it kind of worked out for him. Mainly he owes that to Sun because, and the sad thing is like, it was a beautiful thing of like, it's like he was speaking to, what was the dude's name? Kit, played by Andy Dick. I was like, the moment I was like, wait, Andy Dick? Obviously we saw some other stars, like one I start like at his party or whatever. I was like, isn't that Johnny Depp? Shut up. Okay, whatever. But nevertheless, it's like, obviously he's helping out with the whole bartending thing and Sun's side of the story. But then like for Sun, she kind of like, to help him with the role, she kind of opens up like she was, when she was talking, like obviously reading the lines as Lito, it was like, she was speaking from her own heart, like of being like lonely. And it's like, to me, it breaks my heart, like seeing everyone kind of like, this is a rough season for everyone across the board, dude. This is also the season to like, yo, tell your best friends about everything that's going on. It's like, Nomi told Bug, and Bug was like flipping out about it. Will/Riley ended up telling Diego. Obviously, we know that Capheus told Jella, but he only told him about Sun, so. Probably biggest surprise story-wise was like Capheus running for like a politician. And the whole story, like, because I think it's something I don't remember if I 100% recovered, because obviously the Christmas special for me was like a couple months ago. That's like, what, 4 months ago? So I might not have brought this up, but I was under the impression, like, Silas's story was going to take a different turn than what it did this season. I was like, oh yeah, like obviously he's going to actually be a bad guy the entire time. Like he was kind of a bad guy before, but even more so now. It's like, no, he actually had a turnaround. Even actually falling for Capheus' mom. Like he even at one point is like, I want to marry her. The reason why he's backing Capheus so hard is because, like, Capheus protected his daughter and brought his little girl Amandi back to him, and he owed, brought him back to his daughter. I forgot. I had that reverse. Sorry, but he saved his life and gave him back, he owes Capheus for that. So it's like it's a combination of like owing Capheus, but plus also falling in love with his mom. They were hanging out a lot and everything. It's like I saw sparks of it in the Christmas special, but it's like was not expecting like him to kind of remain a good guy, but he did. Like even at one point during the season, like having Capheus' back, he's like had men following Capheus because it's like I was like, oh man, don't tell me he is a bad guy. It's like, oh, you kind of said it. It's like, oh no, he had people following Capheus because there's a bounty on his head for running for office. Because everyone's inspired because it's like everyone's heard stories about Van Damme, and it's like everyone wants to have his back in this whole situation because it's like Capheus has been through a lot throughout his life, especially when you look at his backstory, what happened to his dad and everything, and it's like his unwillingness to give up, his willingness to fight, to have courage to stand up to stuff that he doesn't like, fight for injustice, which obviously gets him to meet with Zakia, a reporter who kind of inspires him to kind of, spread that. Obviously, there's people who come to him approaching him and be like, oh yeah, we should have you run. He's like, is this some kind of joke? It's like, no. The fact of the matter is the current person that's running, no one wants to go up against him because he's so corrupt and everything. He's such a piece of crap. We need a good, honest person. And it's like, Capheus is the right person because it's to show like, hey, he's not someone that was like, oh, he's not caught up in this whole political thing. He's not a politician. He's a potential leader because Capheus is just like everyone else. He's lived through these struggles. He knows what it's like, because this is his home and he's not going to let certain things like the different tribes you're from, like who your family is, like those things shouldn't matter. And it never has. Like, for example, like during that speech, he talked about him and Jala both being mixed, backgrounds when it comes to their families. And the struggles, like in particular, when it came to his mom and dad, his mom was like pushed away. His mom was pushed away by his dad's tribe. His dad's tribe was pushed. His dad was pushed away by her tribe. So they kind of had to go on their own, cast aside by both their people, because the fact is they couldn't accept them being in love. And the courage it took to do what they did, raising him and everything. He lost his dad because his dad had the courage to stand up, and a lot of people didn't appreciate that. So, but to see him actually like being in that position to possibly become a leader like that kind of took me by surprise like that, which is it's kind of interesting to think about, like one of them actually being like someone of like heightened power. I mean, great. Who's to say there aren't any other Sense8s out there who are in like, some shape or form of power. And also like the fact is him and I didn't know this was his name. I thought it was the name of his group, but maybe it is the name of his group, but they always just associate it with him. But his name is Superpower, the leader of the group that was basically terrorizing Capheus last season. It's like the dude's around, and he pops up again. He's working for the guy that's opposing Capheus and the leader, the run for office. And at first he's even admitting, he's like, honestly, I should kill you. After everything that went down between us, I should hate you. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, I kind of respect you. Because it's like, it's almost like he looks at him and Capheus as like, we're like legendary. It's like, oh yeah, Superpower and Capheus, Van Damme versus Superpower. It's like, it's a legend in the making, even at one point helping Capheus during like that riot at the speech, helping him, protecting him from the guy that was trying to kill him. And it's like, why? Because it's like, I'm not going to let you be taken out by some politician. It's like, for him, it's almost like he's waiting for Capheus. They're like, yo, so we can knuckle up again. It'd be the battle of the ages, Van Damme versus, it's like, that's his mindset about it. It's like, I want you to stay alive because you are my ultimate rival, almost. But at the same time, it's also because like, I know where you come from. I grew up in the same situation and stuff like that. And it's like, it's really hard to say where he really falls on it. More so than anything, I think it is the kind of the clashing of like, ooh, like the amazingness that would be us clashing and stuff like that. But it seems like in a weird way, he's almost, I'd use the term frenemy towards Capheus and him. I don't know, it's very interesting. Then obviously we have Kala's side of the story. Obviously issues with Rajan, especially when things get complicated about the whole, like, because I was wondering, I was like, oh, that was kind of, I was wondering where that storyline was going to go. Basically, she found, like, some inconsistencies, that basically there was a lot of stuff being, medicines and stuff being lied about, like, during paperwork of, like, oh, yeah, we're actually sending out a whole bunch of antibiotics that have expired, like, Now, medicine can still be used even after it's expired, to my understanding. But the fact of the matter is, it is severely, like, its effects are severely reduced after a while. And granted, we were never put into a time frame, but nevertheless, these are antibiotics that a lot of people need to survive. And it's like they're using expired ones, so that means they're not nearly as potent. So it's like it's all for the purposes of saving money and stuff like that, which she confronts Rajan about. Even at one point, it's like, oh yeah, what about, what possible countries? And she kind of sees Capheus like pop up, and he basically asks, through her, Kenya too, and he's like, possibly, yeah. So for her, it's like, obviously she's kept her own secret about the whole, like, she's the only one that she's not the only one, like, they can do and what they're capable of. Obviously having other people inside your head, but like, I'm guessing that ties in with the storyline later on when we find out, like, oh yeah, he's actually investigating some political corruption. I don't know if that necessarily 100% involves his dad or not, because that turns into a whole thing too, because his dad's got his own opinion. It's like he wants to take India out of the age of, like, worshiping and believing in God, and wants to kind of modernize it and kind of wants to take down temples. So it turns into that conflict between those who believe and those who kind of don't, who have a mentality shared with him, which other people are just kind of like, why can't we have both? Can't we advance while also keeping our beliefs and keeping our tradition? It's like we're losing a little bit of our tradition. No, not a little, a lot of our tradition when we kind of try to modernize, essentially. So that's kind of a debate that's there. That's obviously why he got stabbed last season. A big problem was that. So whether it's 100% including his dad, I'm not sure. But what it does, I kept, it's like that guy Ajay just kept popping up too often. I was like, there's something about him. I don't know what, but there's definitely something there. And then it turns out, like, that he's the one that's part of this investigation or whatever. So I'm assuming maybe he's connected to this whole situation too, like the whole, like, falsifying documents and stuff like that. I mean, we haven't really got any details on it. I'm sure that's something that's going to continue later on, that as part of, like, Kala's side of the story. But obviously the big thing between me and her story also is, like, the whole Wolfgang situation. It's like her and Wolfgang obviously love each other, but they're not willing to take those steps because for Wolfgang, he's like, I'm not good for you. The fact of the matter is, one thing we can never be with each other is because, like, I want you to be happy. And it's like, in his mind, it's like, you'd never be happy with me. I think even at one point, he doesn't get to finish it, but he's like, yeah, I was kind of worried, that, maybe you'd be better off if I was, and I would assume he was going to say if I was dead, like, because to him, he's like feeling like he's causing her a lot of problems because obviously she has a conflicted heart. She's married to Rajan, she cares about him and everything, but at the same time, it's like she cares for Wolfgang deeply. She even asked Riley at one point, like, what's it like between her and Will? Because obviously her and Will meet in real life, but they also have the Sense8 connection as well. And so she's like, it's incredible. It's like you never feel that, like, she's never felt that feeling before. I mean, obviously it has that downside because when you're that close to a person, when they're hurt, you hurt just as much as they do. Especially because it hurts you even more because you feel like you can't do anything for them. But I mean, obviously things between Kala and Wolfgang, obviously, like, they do finally kind of make out. So it's like they're willing. It's like obviously he wants to move to India to be with her, and she's like, no, let me move to Berlin. When she's like, no, with things going on the way they are, it's like that's kind of a terrible idea. But it's like they were packing their bags and stuff, and it's like, once again, like, as you know, kind of got ruined by Whispers popping up. Which, really quick, could bring that up. Whispers, we learned a lot. Like, Whispers is just kind of like the nonchalant bad guy, the boogeyman in the first season. I mean, they escalated a lot more. Everyone's like, yeah, Whispers, avoid him like crazy. Because, like Jonah said, there's no one else like Whispers. Which they also refer to him as the cannibal. Because apparently that's what he did. He kind of ate the rest of his cluster, because it's like, oh yeah, where's his cluster? It's like no one really knows. Whispers is an enigma as to why he does what he does and stuff, because that's kind of a thing with BPO. Like, I think I was under kind of the impression that, like, Whispers was at the top. It's like, no, he's kind of a grunt in this whole thing. He has a high enough position, but it's like, obviously, like, because that's a big theme in this season too, is like Sapiens versus Sensoriums. It's like, obviously the Sensoriums are like a new species and stuff like that, and what that means going, like, because it's like, what if Homo sapiens done in the past? They've essentially wiped out every other species that wasn't them. It's like, oh, what we can do best than anyone else is wipe out another species, and it's like that could be what happens to Sensoriums. So that's a big question, a big struggle throughout this throughout this season, because it's like BPO, there are people like, because obviously I forgot his name at this point. Chrome, that's it. He's a guy that basically Will manipulated Whispers into reveal, because I love that whole situation though of like obviously back and forth. Will's trying to keep Whispers out of his head, trying to use every opportunity he can to learn more and more about Whispers. There was even that moment where it's like, Will was kind of going off on him as like being a cop and like naming all the stuff that he's observed, and you have Milton be like, I mean, Whispers named Milton, but being like, oh yeah, oh you're very good for a cop, but he's like, yeah, but you're a freaking amateur, and pulls a plug off the wall. It's like, yeah, this whole room, it's fake to make you think this and that. And the fact of the matter is, I know you're not in Iceland. The fact is, I can even hear that you're still in Iceland because I can hear the seagulls and stuff like that. It's like, oh man, he got Will good. Then later on, we see Riley turn off a stereo and was like, dude, they're even good. You think they're amateurs? They're just as good. They're not stupid. It's like they were playing tick for tack, and it's like it was so good, dude. But the thing is that dude Crom, because basically revealed that BPO is kind of in a struggle. There are people within it that are not keen on the idea of sensoriums that kind of like, hey, we need to kind of like control them or wipe them out kind of mentality, because it's like, humans tend to lock up or trying to control what they fear. But this Chrome dude was kind of like, hey, there are people like me within my organization who want to do more. Who don't want things to kind of be like this. There are people who share that. I mean, granted, it didn't work out for him because, Whispers using a lady ends up killing him. Which is like, we never actually got to meet anyone else that would be on the Sense8 side of like, of the opinion of like, oh yeah, Sense8s are fine. We shouldn't we never get to meet any of his allies, at least not to my knowledge. I mean, because that was kind of an interesting, ever-growing thing, because especially things got complicated later on when they were like, oh, Jonas is dead. Oh, actually, he's not dead. He's actually working with them again. It's like, wait, why? Because basically the chairman, the leader of VPO, whoever he is, does not trust Milton. He wants Milton around because of the project Milton's working on. It basically, it's like a zombie project is what Nomi kind of phrases it as, and it's basically him taking control of a sensei, kind of cutting into their brain and controlling them. That's what he did last season when it came to that doctor dude that was trying to get Nomi to get lobotomized. Like the guy he sent to kill him and may kill himself, that was kind of the beginning. Like that was our glimpse into him doing that. He did a lot more this season. We actually kind of find out this season was definitely, like I said, expansion upon the Sense8 stuff, where it's like we learn more about Angelica, about her role in all this. We're still not 100% sure why she worked with him like she did. Like, what was it that she was getting out of this? I mean, we learned from a lady named Carol that she was looking for her children specifically. I don't know whether she means like her biological children. And even amongst that, we ended up finding out like Sense8s can have children at any point in their life. It doesn't matter about gender too, because like Will and his cluster are not the only children. They're not the only cluster Angelica ever gave birth to. She gave birth to another one, which one of those people, I think it was, his name was Todd, which obviously he plays a role in this season. But Todd brought up an interesting element of like not wanting to be different. He didn't want to be a sensei. He almost hated himself for it. And I guess it came from possibly a religious angle, because they went out of their way to kind of show him like with a cross necklace. And it's like, so maybe from a religious angle, he's like, this kind of goes up against everything I believe, so I hate being what I am. But there's like, because it seems like at one point, like, Angelica is working with them, but at other points, it seems like she's working against them. Because the fact of the matter is, she killed herself to get away from Whispers, which she went to Chicago in the first place because there was another dude named Raul, who was actually someone that Lito knew. He kind of basically helped, I guess, Lito kind of come out a little bit, kind of gave him the courage to kind of come out. In a sense of, like, kind of put it more in perspective to Lito, who he is, I guess. His sexual orientation, I guess. I don't know. That's what it seemed like to me. I don't know now whether that was his first, like whether that was Lito's like first experience. I don't know, but it seemed like it might have been, because like I said, he was still making excuses. He's like, oh yeah, if I want to kind of dive into the role, I've got to, I'm not doing this because I'm gay. It's like, I've got to dive deeper into the role and everything like that. I've got to experience more things. That was his justification for it at the time. So, basically, Todd was used by whispers to kill a whole bunch of people, making it look like just like a. It was an assassination, but it looked like just a straight up shooting because a lot of people were killed. But obviously there was this political guy that was the top branch. Because basically that's what the chairman is doing. He has people on his hit list, people that might contradict like certain things, or go against certain things that he wants to get past and stuff like that. So he's getting rid of the competition, getting rid of anyone that might stand in his way. But once again, it's like, he doesn't trust Milton because Milton has something up his sleeve, but he needs Milton for the fact is of the whole zombie project. Which, once again, going back to the main point I was making, it's like, Angelica, like I said, there's the whole killing herself, but there's also that point where she used, wasn't it Raul? She used him to basically, at one point, like, he ends up calling his dad, but he doesn't say anything. I don't know whether he was unable to say anything. At the time, I was thinking like, oh, Angelica made the call, and then obviously he was kind of, telepathically there, so he didn't want to say anything because Angelica. But then I was like, oh, why didn't Angelica say something on his behalf? It was like, no, it's like because he was really there, just to kind of like give him some peace and let him hear his dad. Basically, she has him set the whole cabin on fire while her research and everything is, so they kind of had to start over. So it's like, what, like, so. I guess at that point she found out what they were really going to use her project for. So maybe at that point she stayed with them long enough to be like, hey, find out, probably tried to destroy BPO from the inside. But I mean, unfortunately that didn't work out. So it's like, what was her reasoning for doing all that? Once again, like the whole conversation, like, oh yeah, like she's looking for her kids. Like, I don't know where that really goes. There's the lady Carol ends up, like Riley and Diego stumbled across her body, she ended up killing herself. I mean, Jonas was there in the room, so I don't know whether he visited her or like physically visited her. But nevertheless, it's like she just happens to cut her wrist open and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's like a lot of stuff that we walked away from this season still not knowing much about. Like I said, a lot of hardships. Like for instance, Will having to go through the fact is that his dad ended up dying in this season. Especially because the last time they spoke was obviously what went down in the Christmas special. But his dad was dying. Like, Will wasn't around. I mean, Will blamed himself because it's like, obviously he had to stay away from his dad for his own protection. But the fact of the matter is, like, he wasn't there for his dad. So his dad, didn't take care of himself. He was so sad about. But in that one last moment before his dad died, like Riley was beside him. But then when he starts looking, he sees Will. Now, whether that's just like delusion from his sickness or not, I don't know. Or maybe on some level at that last moment, that part of his brain kind of activated and allowed him to see Will instead of seeing Riley. Whether that's the case, I don't know. It is kind of interesting that this season kind of pushes it even more forward. Like basically, it all comes down to Will. Will is kind of like the leader of this cluster. Like, he's kind of the one that kind of helps everyone. He kind of keeps them all together and helps them with their, like, because I mean, like I brought it up earlier. That was the beautiful thing, just the interactions between. I feel like there's certain like groups and people we never really got to see like meet up and interact in season one, but we definitely see it in this season. It's just everyone talking and helping each other with different things in their respective lives and stuff like that. So. Because I was like, for instance, I was really scared for Riley when she was going to Chicago. I mean, it's like Will's telling her, "Do not go to Chicago. Like, don't do this, especially if you're going by yourself." It's like, I did appreciate the fact is that Diego was like, "Oh yeah, the fact of the matter is, if this was a movie, this be the point where the lovable, sidekick gets, killed." He's like, "So you know what? I'm gonna wait in the car," and he walks away, and you have Will obviously inside of Riley being like, "Yo, D!" It's like douchebag. To a certain extent, but obviously every other time he was there, so. I mean, there were moments throughout this season where obviously we got more looks at other senseis. Obviously, like, old man Hoi, meeting with Riley at her, like, show and everything, because she had said a speech that basically drew everyone in and basically kind of like, I forgot what her exact wording was. It was like a very beautiful thing she said that kind of drew everyone in. There's even a lady who's a Sense8 who has she has like a tree tattooed on the back of her head. I'd assume she's kind of like a monk or whatever. But she has a mentality that like, basically you can't change things around the world because if you try to, all you're going to do is make more suffering. Only thing you can change is yourself, which Riley is like, I don't believe that. Because if they really believe that, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing right now, trying to fight against BPO, because this is about their survival and everything. So, I mean, granted, we had that, like, that ending where it's like, I was like so scared because like, are they gonna? Like part of me is wondering, it's like, yeah, they wouldn't kill off one of this. Like the show's called Sense8. There's no way they're gonna kill off one of them. It's like, I mean, it's still a possibility that it could happen, but I don't think it. I mean, there's always the possibility that's the direction this could go. But it's like the moment, like, you know, Whispers had Wolfgang, I was like flipping out. I was like, dude, especially because like they keep shocking him and he's bleeding, and it's like not just affecting him, it's affecting everyone. But I loved it when Will was like, yeah, he's like flipping over the table. He's like, oh, the fact is, you know, he came towards like Whispers. He's like, oh, but I can't visit you. He's like, yeah, idiot, because I'm here in front of you. I'm like, yeah. And Will starts beating the crap out of him. Jonas had the opportunity to choose a side, but he's like, yeah, you won't understand it now, but I have my reasons for doing this. Like to him, to me, it's so far it seems like Jonas's only reason is his own survival. It's like, I'll do whatever I have to, make a deal with the devil if I have to, but if it means surviving, then survive. But it's like, you kind of went out of your way to help them before, but I guess now, you know, the grass is greener on the other side. Like when you were free, you had the option, you had the choice, but now they kind of make all the pain and suffering stop. It seemed like, because you were willing to help Will and them, it seemed like, but now it's like that all changed. So, which at the end of it, they have him and they also have Whispers, and it's like they're going to try and get Wolfgang back. It's like they're all together in London. I mean, granted, it's not like under a very good circumstances, but I love it was that little moment of like everyone's being there, obviously with the exception of Wolfgang, but it's like they're all there together meeting for the first time, but you can't even enjoy the moment because it's like it's tailored around something so bad. And the fact is that I mean, it's almost a reflection of the end of season 1, because season 1 you had the situation with Riley and Will, like obviously dosing Will so that, like, you know, Whispers won't be in his head, and then you had that moment where everyone's gathered around them like that. And since I'm thinking about it, because it was in the back of my head, there was that moment, like after Will's dad died, that, you know, Will's kind of shutting down and everything, and Whispers had the audacity to come to him. It's like, oh yeah, you weren't there for your dad in his time in need and stuff like that, like, you know, starting crap because he's trying to break Will down and everything. So, well, yeah, I mean, obviously Will's kind of got his payback for that as well as everything else Whispers done. Also forgot to mention the fact is there were actually some Sense8s that met with Capheus after hearing his speech and everything. So like it seems like we're expanding upon that more and more. There's even I like the final line of the episode being like, "You wanted a war? Well, you got a war." And it's like, dude, I don't know if the show's being like, obviously it's like the show literally just came out yesterday. I don't know when I'm going to put this up. I don't know whether it's going to be today, which is Saturday. I'll probably end up waiting until Sunday. Maybe this might go Sunday afternoon, maybe exactly at noon. I don't know. I mean, Eastern Standard Time for anyone else that might, you know, whether you're living in the U.S. or outside of the U.S. But it's obviously too early to say that whether this is getting renewed for another season or not. It took a long time before they were officially announced, like, oh yeah, the show got renewed for a second season. But Netflix is pretty good about this. I feel like if enough people watch a show, like, you know, I mean, usually even then numbers aren't necessarily good. And I feel like if there's a big enough fan base behind something, then obviously, you know, season 3 is like a full out war. Obviously, this season was them kind of pulling in other Sense8s. That's going to be the case, obviously. I hope Kala, out of anyone, is going to be the one that takes down Leela. Because out of anyone, she from the very beginning was like, I don't like her. Especially because she was the one that made the first move at that dinner table. She grabbed the bottle and smashed it down and started a fire. Because it's like, for the very beginning, she didn't like Leela. I mean, it turns out, obviously, for good reasons, but still. Also, that whole thing with Sun, like, obviously, when they were in the parking lot, like, when she was chasing after her brother, like, obviously, you have Will and Wolfgang going back and forth debating, like, oh, we can do this, no, we should do that. She's like, no, I've got an idea. Shoots the gun, hits the car's gas tank. The gas, because of the slope, is sloping down, and she lights a lighter, and blows up a car. And she's like, yeah, I knew from the angle that, you know, because of the slope, it would come down. And, like, Wolfgang's like, okay. That was hot. It's like, dude. Because he even pointed out the fact is, and that was kind of an interesting thought to have. He's like, huh? And she's like, what? It's like, it's kind of interesting. The fact is that you are both men in your life are connected to criminals. It's like, what does that say about you? Because Kala's got this whole mentality that she's kind of like not a good person. You know, obviously she brought up like there's darkness in her, just like there's good within Wolfgang. He's not willing to see it, but she is. I don't know, like, to me, I just never, like, I think I brought it up during the Christmas special. I don't get why you're still with Raj. Be with Wolfgang, dude. It's like you're totally in sync. You want to be with each other. It's like more so than anything, like, when you come, like, it's you who kind of find your way to each other the most, like, amongst the others, I feel like. But like I said, like, this season, it seems like they balanced it out. There was even that moment where Riley and Sun had met up again, and they're like, yeah, we literally were kind of in different roles the last time we met. You missed your home, and God, I forgot what Sun had said exactly, but it's like the roles have been flipped for them. Because an interesting thing about Sun too was like what she said of like the fact that every time she got really close to having a home somewhere, she always had to leave. Obviously, her situation, obviously before her dad died and found out how much of a douchebag her brother was, it was with her family, and then that all changed when her dad died, especially finding out her brother was behind it. And then there was being in prison. Being in prison, like, that was another home, but her brother took that away from her to enforce her, like, oh, I have to run now. So I'm very curious to see where this all goes, like, in her side of the story, because obviously Woojin knows the truth about which I love the line of, like, everyone's like, oh, we're gonna like, Will's like, oh, the fact of the matter is Woojin's here, so like we don't have to worry about it. Like, there, you know, the law does work sometimes. And then, like, you know, Junki shot him, and then like, oh, what are we gonna do now? And Will said, let's get this motherfucker. I'm like, yeah! I got too hyped then. It's like literally this show had me mega hyped on so many levels. It's just like so good. I completely forgot I wasn't talking about Nomi's side of the story. The fact is of her and Neats getting engaged at the end. What made it so much beautiful, I was like, the fact is that I was like, the moment she was acting like weird, I was like, what don't tell me you're about to drop some bomb on us, like right here at the end of it, Neats. Like, oh, don't tell me that you've been a bad guy or something this entire time. And she walks with something like saying all this stuff. I'm like, wait, are you about to? And she's like, she popped a question. And then Nomi's like, wait. I'm like, wait. She's pulling like a box. I was like, don't tell me. It's like they both pull up. I was like, you were just waiting for the moment. It's like, yes. Especially because she went to her sister's wedding and everything. What she gave that lovely speech and everything. Like, obviously her and Tegan have always had their issues. Tegan didn't initially want Nomi to take the surgery because the fact of the matter is, like, basically the risk. Because it's like, no matter how much of a fight they've always been in, no matter how much problems, like she said before the moment of, like, when she woke up and Tegan was there holding her, she really didn't know what it was like to, like, have a family. Because obviously her parents have never really been 100% accepting of her and stuff. But, you know, being her sister's, like, maid of honor, giving the toast at the dinner and stuff like that. I mean, she gave the toast more so than anything out of spite because her mom was like, "Oh, don't embarrass us any further," and blah, you know, blah 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 blah. And Neats was like, "Yeah, you need to say that speech even more so now, just to spite her." And it was just a very lovely, beautiful thing. And there's a ceremony and everything, which Agent Bendix pops up. He was gone like all the season. Like, I think the Christmas special was the only episode he really popped up, except for that wedding episode. And it's like he's about to arrest Nomi, and I'm like, dude, this sucks. It's like, what about the whole like E-Death thing? And it's like, oh yeah, because he never looked at the warrants and stuff like that. He's been so anal about going after her. And then when it came up, it's like, oh no, she must have did something. And because initially her dad was like, yeah, please don't make this more of a problem. And he's like, this is obviously your sister's big day, which Nomi's like, I understand. Her mom is like, oh, the fact of the matter is, I told you, Tegan, you shouldn't, blah, 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 just being, just the worst. But then you had that moment where her dad was like, the fact is that Bendix is about to reach for her. He's like, don't you lay a hand on my daughter. And you see the moment in Nomi's eyes. I was like, oh. And she's like, he called me his daughter. Like, he's never done that in his entire life. Because even when her mom was running her mouth, her dad was almost kind of like, honey, shut the hell up. Like, you almost see that look on his face. Like, I'm thinking his mindset has changed. Like, season 1 made it seem like it was 100% like Nomi's parents being 100% against her whole situation, but it seems like her dad's kind of like leaned more towards her side and being understanding. Like I said, her mom's still kind of so there was some good that came out of that. Also, we learned a little bit more about Bug, and I love that. Is that Bug actually is a big fan of Lito's. He even starts referencing like one of Lito's movies and stuff like that, because at one point, like, Lito, what was it? Who was talking? I forgot who was talking, where Lito had to use the line of like, all right, Nomi was on the intercom talking to Junki about what he did, and he was like, justice, you know, and we're justice, and we're coming for you. And the Bug's like, it's from this movie. It's like, and Lito's like, yeah, thanks, Bug. And that's not my best film, but it had a lot of good lines, and I was like, ah. Um, Another little thing, just it's in the back of my memory, is the fact is sun and technology don't mix. Pulling from the like Christmas special, obviously like seeing her brother on TV, she smashed like her hand down, but Nomi had to move it over so that she smashed on the food, and she's like, "Sorry." It literally came up again when she was at her Sense8's house. She ends up punching his TV because her brother up there running his mouth. Oh, my sister, all these terrible things my sister did, but she was my sister. I can't imagine. It's like, oh, shut up, you murderous sack of crap. But kind of getting back to it, kind of along those lines about Nomi as well as Bug, is the fact is that the person that obviously we never met him, we only know him as the guy. Obviously, he's wearing I can't remember. It's been such a long time. The V for Vendetta mask. And basically, he admits, he's like, oh, the fact is he knew that Nomi was a Sense8. It's like, you know what I am? It's like, and know about BPO? It's like, yeah. The fact is we seek truths. And it's like, that's a big truth to know and everything like that. They don't know too much about BPO, but they do know it's an organization of mass amounts of money and power. And the fact of the matter is, they do want to take BPO down too. They ended up helping Nomi with this whole like thing, but obviously giving her the E-Death, which basically wiped everything clean. Like, in a way, it's like, basically, it's electronic death. It basically made she dies, so it's like erasing a lot of the stuff that obviously the warrants and all the stuff that was set up to capture and everything. So now she's kind of free. I mean, granted, I get the feeling like Bendix isn't done. I'm sure he's going to come back with a vengeance in the future. But the fact of the matter is to know that like there's a large scale organization outside of the Sense8s that's worried about BPOs, and to even know that they know about Sense8s like that is just astounding to me. This is actually a very big season about learning a lot of stuff about, like, kind of like, a little bit kind of like, I don't really call it, like, a lot of these side, main characters, like, for example, like, obviously we learned about Hernando's family in the Christmas special, but we also learned about Danny because Joaquin pops up again, and he brings Danny's parents, and it's like, but Joaquin's a piece of crap, like, why are you willing to like listen to him or something like that? But I guess they're more so there for their daughter. But Danny was like, I'm not going home with you. I'm staying here with Lito and Hernando. Which I love the fact is they were buying that new place and everything. And she's like, oh, the fact of the matter is, I mean, oh my God, we should get this place because all three of us can fit in the tub. And it's like, wait, what? It's like, we see your ulterior motives, Danny. They are a family in their own right. And the fact is that they have each other, and it's like, they're not going to let anything separate them again. And it was just a beautiful thing of like Danny being like, I'm not going to go back to you. This is a family of love, and they're not one like, my family of control, money, and power and stuff like that. And the fact of the matter is her parents are like, yeah, we'll cut you off and stuff like that. Lito's like, well, fine. And she doesn't need your money. And once again, I'm like, I feel like a lot of stuff is just kind of like on its own. I was wondering if Joaquin would pop up again, and lo and behold, he did. So it's already setting up a lot of stuff to be like, okay, we're already setting up stuff that could possibly pop up in season 3. Like I said, it's too early to really tell, but I feel like this show is definitely going to get renewed for a 3rd season or something like that. It is a Netflix show. I do have the thought in my mind, like, whether it'll be, because Netflix has a tendency to make pretty short, I mean, depending on how outstandingly, like if a show is like really, really, really caught a lot of people's attention, then it would be like, oh yeah. But I mean, at the end of the day, it also comes down to the creators and stuff like that. I wonder, will it be another 2-year period before we get the next season, if that is the case? Which is understandable. I mean, like this series has such a large production schedule, like filmed in so many different locations and stuff like that. So it's like understandable that it'd take a long time to film this. You got to get the right conditions, the right, get the people together, that your actors and locations ready. There's a lot to prep for this show, so no wonder it takes such a long time. I don't know if the entire time was spent, because obviously I'm sure the Wachowskis were working on other things too. Obviously they're like two of the biggest like components to this series. So, but yeah, like what I would love for a season 3 is obviously expanding more about the Sense8 situation. Obviously wanting Wolfgang rescue, especially because it's like finally him and Kala can be together. It's like, but like, dude, like I said, it's a monumentous moment where they're all three of them. I mean, not all three, all of them are together in one spot. Just all out. The fact is that next season, like, season 3 is, like I say, is going to be all out war. BPO versus, like, it took this one cluster to stand out. Granted, there have been others that probably stood up to him that have either died or been, brought into BPO. Because even like Jonas talked about the rest of his cluster. He's the last of his cluster. The others are were either killed by BPO or otherwise. So probably other circumstances. So. Because the kind of question came up between Nomi and Neitz, and that was like, Nomi's like, asking Neitz is like, you didn't ask to be in this situation. Me, I don't have a choice. I will always have these voices in my head, but you have the choice. The matter is, you never asked to be signed up for this. Like, no one in this whole situation did. It's just they were born this way, and they have to fight for their own survival and stuff like that. And that's the beauty of it. It's like, it's not even just its main overarching story. It's also, which, like, I feel like, there's even more so this season. Like, obviously, more so than anything, the first season is about introducing the characters, introducing their backgrounds, their own struggles, their story, and obviously giving you a little taste of the overall plot, the whole world building with, Whispers and BPO, and they continue that this season, but also diving deeper into everyone's respective stories, At the end of the day, I'm very curious to see will everyone ever go back to their homes, like their respective places and stuff like that. I'm very curious. Because as I was talking about earlier, we learned a lot about Angelica, but that was only pieces here and there, which to me, that's another thing too, like kind of like us, obviously the backstory of what a Sense8 is. Like we also develop more into what they're capable of doing. The fact of the matter is that you can kind of tap into memories, like because they are her cluster, they can tap into Angelica's memories a little bit here and there. They can't get the full pictures, but there's pieces here and there, like remnants of her that kind of resonate inside of all of them. There's also that other Sense8 I wasn't expecting, Puck. What a douche. Like, I appreciate the fact that he's trying to make a move on Riley the entire time and everything. And it's obviously like he's in Korea. I was like, why specifically? Like, I'm curious, why was he in Korea? Like, he ended up helping Sun escape when they escaped that transport, but it's like, why was he in Korea in the first place? That was kind of interesting. Not unless, I don't think he got called. Like, obviously it was kind of a surprise, but it's like, maybe someone else kind of like, because, well, I'll go ahead and quickly finish my thought, but it's like, obviously, like, I think everyone around has heard about this particular cluster, Angelica's cluster, of like, yo, they're the ones that are steering things up. And the point I was making is like, I like the fact is that Sun was like grabbed his toe and was about to break his toe and stuff like that because he was hitting on him and everything. It's like, oh, the fact is I saved you. I was your hero. Your knight in shining armor usually kind of involves me getting a reward. Which she also did the same thing to the dude that was walking beside Nomi. He was like, nice rack for a dude. And it was just like, okay. And Sun's like, did he just say what I think he says? Like, uh-huh. He's like, do you want me to hurt him? It's like, no, this is Tegan's moment. He's like, yeah. Oh, people usually talk to stuff. Must mean that they don't have anything that anyone wants to listen to. Do you agree with that? Haha. Okay, hurt him a little bit. Hurts, like, kind of squeezes his finger, and it's just like, I love that, that Sun for you. Like, I'd say probably out of all three of them, like, the biggest protectors amongst the cluster is obviously Wolfgang, Sun, as well as Will. They're kind of obviously they're the most trained ones, but I mean, don't sell anyone else short. I love the fact is that Capheus was riding the bike, because I was thinking like, oh, they're going to have it so that Capheus is just the bus dude, which is always what he's known for, but I guess he's just, he's a driver in general. So it's like, hey, give him some wheels, he'll tear up some asphalt or dirt or, each respective area. So, oh, right. The thing I was going to talk about is, I thought it was kind of an interesting thing. I forgot what it's called. The Archipelago. It's basically a network of connected Sense8s. It's like, it's literally Google, but, probably even faster. Basically, you want to find out some information about someone. Well, there's one person who talks to another Sensei who's also another Sensei who's halfway across the world who talks to another Sensei in another country. It's like a large network of Senseis, and it's crazy because obviously with the way it works, being a Sensei and everything, of course you'd have like a large scale network like that. And I'm sure that's something I'd love to see kind of get expanded upon more in a third season, because it's such a fascinating concept to me. It's literally kind of like the thought of like, it's something I've heard in different things, kind of science fiction, of like an accumulation of a whole bunch of consciousness to exist in one space. One consciousness, and that's kind of what the archipelago kind of represents, a neural network of like consciousness melding together as one. I mean, really, they keep their own separate, consciousness within it and stuff, but still. And obviously, we're probably going to see more about the zombie project, what that really entails, because it seems like obviously Milton's ultimate goal is that he can do it to any Sense8 at any point in time, and probably not just Sense8s, probably like regular people too, but it's like, what is his ultimate goal? Like, because it's something that Will brings up in the conversation one time. He's like, he looks at Milton's life. Obviously, he's got his wife and his daughter, but the fact of the matter is he's also caught up with work and everything, so he has to make sacrifices in his personal life. So it's like, even Will makes a comment of like, oh, you're just as trapped as we are, because he's caught between BPO and wanting to, can't escape being what he is, a sensei, but also wanting, that normal life with his family and stuff like that. So maybe Milton's lone goal is to basically kind of do what that thought I had about like one consciousness. Maybe his ultimate goal is to take the zombie project and make it so that every sensei kind of falls under his control. Like I said, like he has to go through a lot to get it so that they are under his control, has to go through a whole procedure. And maybe he's trying to fine tune it, because it's something him and Angelica worked on. Is like maybe fine tuning it to the point where he can do it without having to do all that stuff that he can just control. And maybe that's a random thought I was having about it. So, like I said, I cannot stress enough how fantastic this season is. I was so disappointed when I found out I was on the final episode, because I was so sure, like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready for episode 10, and read episode 11. I'm like, wait, what? How is this episode? What? I mean, it's episode 11, because, season, like, Christmas special was 2 episodes in one, so that's, in case you were worrying about the numbering and everything. But I was like, I'm already on episode 11, but I had a feeling when it had the whole, like, son story, I was like, oh, this seemed like some, like, I was like, no, but we got 2 episodes. Oh, no, we have 1 episode left. So, like I said, just overall fantastic. I want there to be a season 3 so badly, and I already want it to come out. That's the problem with Netflix, because I tend to binge everything within like the first 2 or 3 days. Like I try to get like, just not even just for the purposes of this. Like even before I was doing the podcast, I would always do that when it comes to TV shows. Like especially if it's something I'm super hyped about, which I was super hyped about. Normally, I typically kind of end up staying up late, like because typically here where I live in North Carolina. If you're curious, like Netflix stuff obviously comes out like 3 o'clock in the morning here. So normally I kind of stay up long enough until like it reaches 3:01, and then bam, like start binging on whatever it is. But lately my sleep schedule's kind of been all over the place. I've been actually going to bed early, because typically like I won't bore you with the details any further than that, but nevertheless, it's just like my sleep schedule's kind of been all over the place, so I wasn't able to just kind of start watching it as soon as I wanted to, like early Friday morning, which I did anyway, but nevertheless. I mean, I'm guessing that's kind of all I want to talk about. Like, dude, if you want to talk about Sense8, do leave some comments down below. Like, I will be throwing spoilers up there. I'll probably leave a comment too. It's like, if you want to like have a thread conversation about this, we're going full, you can go crazy in the comments down below. This is a full spoiler territory. I will leave a comment at the very top, the description all over the place, that like letting anyone know, do not read the comments if you don't want to be spoiler type of thing. Like, I want to have a conversation. What did you think? What did you love? Whose stories did you enjoy the best? It's like, because personally, like I've shown my bias in like everything I talk about. I don't want to choose anyone, because I just love this cast of characters. These actors are freaking amazing, because they made, I normally don't talk about actors like this, but it's just like, to me, like they did such a fantastic job, because each of these actors made me fall in love with these characters, made me just like hurt when they hurt, and feel happy when they're happy. It's like, to me, this is like the party season too, because there were so many opportunities for like the party and live it up type of moments too. So, side note, like I love the music they've chosen for like obviously this kind of goes back. I keep mentioning the Christmas special, and I do apologize for that. This will be the last time I mention it, I promise you. There's that song called "Here We'll Go." Home Will Go is what I meant to say. It's by a group called Walk Off the Earth, I think is what they're called. I think there's 2 different versions of the song. There's like a music video version that has Stephen Aoki part of it. So that was cool, but it's like I actually had to look that song up, because like obviously I rewatched the Christmas special at the beginning. I lied to you. I just mentioned it again. I'm sorry. But I had rewatched it, and it's like, oh yeah, it's been a couple months, so let me refresh my memory, and it got me ready for the rest of this season. I was like, dude, it just put me back in that mindset and everything. So I heard that song again. I was like, dude, I really like this song. So I highly recommend, like, it's just fantastic musical choices, but that's the song that just stood out to me, especially because it happened at one of my favorite scenes in the season, was just like that party during that time. So Very curious to see where everyone's stories go. Like, obviously, now that everyone's in their respective situation, like, in London and everything, getting ready for war, rescuing Wolfgang. What does this mean for people like Felix, Danny, Hernando? Will they find out the truth? Because Capheus hasn't really told anyone. Like I said, the only person he told was Jala, and that was only about Sun. So will he tell everyone else about, his situation, especially his mom? Kala wanted to bring it up to Rajan, but that was about it. Which that's another thing too. About forget to mention. Whisper saw her face because the first thought that was in Wolfgang's mind was her. Because they made a point during the conversation where he was like, "You're the last thing I think about when I go to sleep, and the first thing I think about when I wake up." And it's like he had her on her mind too, because it was like probably like, yeah, this might be a moment where I die. And it's just like they really pushed that too this season of like how much like we saw it to a small extent last season, especially when Riley was about to when she was being suffocated, like Will felt it and obviously reacted to it. Like, we saw everyone in the cluster feeling it when this happened to them, so. Goodness, I'm sorry. Like, I do apologize. I was all over the place. I have to start taking notes. I take notes, but I need to start listing off certain subjects. I do it with I've done it in the past, but it's just like, I'm so not accustomed to doing it like that. I'm just accustomed of just like, freeballing it off the top of my head. I need to start listing stuff out. That way I can keep everything in particular order and not just be all over the place like I am. So I do apologize very much so for me just being all over the place, but I just had to get this out there as soon as possible, just because I had to talk about it. It's like, it was just so good. But really, that is everything I wanted to talk about. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more that I end up bringing up, like thinking about later on. I'm like, I wish I had talked about that. How I know? Because it literally happens all the time, because there's plenty of things I typically end up forgetting to talk about. Maybe I'll make like a small video continuing this later on or something. That's kind of where my mindset is. That's typically kind of how I kind of deal with certain things like this. It kind of popped up with the magicians and everything, but that's its own thing. So. But really, to the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.